Hey, everybody, and welcome to Sell Yeah, a podcast segment ran by 8fig that aims to feature interviews with a wide array of our valued partners and sometimes seller customers to spread the good word about what they're doing to bring value to the e-commerce space and make for a better ecosystem for us all. This is a very special episode because not only is our first ever podcast recording, but also we have a very special guest with us today, Lisa Kinski from GETIDA. Lisa, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so honored to one, be here, and two, be on the inaugural episode of Sell Yeah. And I love the name. I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, we appreciate it. That was a very clever name brought up by Emma. So that was
Oh,
I
of
got to give her the credit.
course. She's
I
so
know.
smart. I love her. Your whole team's really great, but Emma's brilliant. Absolutely great job, Emma. Kudos to you.
She crushes it with all the marketing puns. So I have to hand it to her for that one. But anyway, yeah, thank you. We're so excited to have you. This is going to be really fun. And for those who are meeting Lisa for the first time, she is a rock star in the e-commerce space and is the marketing and partnerships manager at GETIDA. GETIDA is a very particularly useful platform for Amazon sellers as it is the global leader in Amazon FBA auditing and reimbursements. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot about that today. And I'm really excited to dig into it a little bit. Without further ado, I think we could go ahead and kick it off. So Lisa, thanks again for joining. Really excited to have you on. We know you have a really impressive background when it comes to supply chain management and e-commerce at large, working with a myriad of other brands like Novaland Tech, producing your own podcast before joining GETIDA. So let's dig in there a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about your background. Like what led you down this path and what's good with it?
Yeah, sure thing. So I actually, found my way into Amazon via supply chain at Novaland. Previously, though, I worked in criminal background screening. So went to college at Kennesaw State University here in Metro Atlanta. Fresh out of college, worked in background screening, and that was an interesting job. You pick up lots of stories there. Did that for, it was like 4 years, something like that. But of course, March of 2020, when COVID reared its ugly head and everyone closed down and nobody was getting hired and the courts were all closed, there was literally nothing that we could do. So it heavily impacted the criminal background screening industry in kind of the inverse way that it did e-commerce. So I was one of the many unlucky few that were laid off in that time period, and was, sitting at home, losing my mind, watching more Netflix than I could ever imagine, and applying to jobs every single day. And I just so happened to find the position for Novaland. I had just started my career in marketing. I was previously in customer service and then in sales at the background screening firm, and then worked into marketing and events, and had just started my position there, got laid off, and then found this listing for Novaland that was for a marketing, assistant. It was kind of an entry-level marketing job. And I was like, well, that should work out. It's a further drive than I wanted, but beggars certainly can't be choosers. And so I go to the Novaland office and I meet Francois Geoffrey, who's absolutely still a very good friend of mine. He's not there anymore. He's with Google now. But I started with them, and that was really my first introduction into e-com. So a little bit about Novaland. They're an end-to-end supply chain service provider for e-commerce business owners, not just e-com, but that was the lion's share of their client base. And they helped with sourcing from a network of factories. They helped with shipping and logistics. They had 3PL services. So I really got to know the back end of what it takes to launch a brand, from the production and selection of your product even before it got onto the marketplace. So we handled everything before you got it listed. So just through there, we started making some of these connections with other partners in the industry. And one day, Francois had the idea. He was like, we should start a podcast. And I was like, you have lost your mind. Absolutely not. Because he wanted to do it live. He wanted to go straight to live. And I was like, Francois, we have nothing. We have our built-in cameras on our laptops. We have no tools. We have no background. So I did a ton of research on what mics we should buy, cameras. If we're going to live stream, how do you do it? Went through the approval process with LinkedIn Live, because LinkedIn Live was still brand new when we started Link Up Leaders. And we pre-recorded a couple of episodes. And then David Dayon with Amazon Experts was actually our first live stream guest. He was our guinea pig, He's an absolute gem. So any of our problems he just rolled with, but I was doing all of the editing myself, and because I did video editing back in the day too. So kind of all of these little things I picked up along the way were slowly prepping me for starting a podcast in the e-com space. But from there, I mean, ran the show and got to know the GETIDA boys, and then the rest is kind of history. So
Wow, what an interesting background, starting in background screening and then making your way to Noviland and starting the podcast. And yeah, I echo your sentiment towards starting a podcast. I definitely feel like, we got a lot going on here, but it's all fun and it's all really great. And you said that's kind of how that segued you into getting to know the GETIDA guys a little bit more, like Yoni
yeah.
and I think Max, the founders, right?
Yeah, so Yoni and Max are co-founders of GETIDA. I'd actually not met Max yet. I had met Yoni first, obviously, and then I got to know Eitan. So Eitan had joined as CEO kind of shortly after I got to know Yoni, and I saw them at a show in Florida where I was chatting with Eitan for at least an hour at one of Carlos Alvarez WOE events right before Powwow in November of 21, November 21, the one in Miami.
Yeah.
Carlos had a pre-networking event there, and I was still at Noviland. It was the first thing that I convinced Noviland to let us attend. That was like an Amazon event. And I was talking to Eitan for like an hour and a half, and I got done, and I was like, wait a second, who are you? And he was like, oh, I'm Eitan with GETIDA. I was like, oh my gosh, dude, hi, nice to meet you. Like, we had this whole big long conversation, and I didn't even know who he was. So yeah, I got to know Eitan that way, and then, saw Yoni at the shows and just met more and more of the team. I met Greg Gia, who's now our chief revenue officer, at that powwow. And then the following Prosper, met even more of the team and just got to know them. And of course, Rob, everybody knows Rob Moneyman Stanley. So he and I had some mutual connections and some conversations, and just kind of sowed the seed for when they had an opportunity for a full-time marketing and partnerships manager to come on and also help them to advocate for the brand, be part of the faces of GETIDA, right? Because there are a couple of us. Obviously, Yoni and Eitan. Max is a little more behind the scenes. He is so technically brilliant that he really runs the platform and all of the data and knowledge behind the tool. So Yoni and Eitan are for the forefront. Obviously, Rob as our chief evangelist, and then myself. So they brought me in to kind of co-host both of the GETIDA podcasts, which are Prime Talk and Sellernomics, if you don't mind me giving those little plugs right there.
Of course.
You guys go check them out. We've had 8Fig on both shows. And so they brought me on to do that and just kind of build out this partnership. And I always like to joke that I get paid to make friends, and I have the best job in the world. I really do.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, it is being in partnerships. It just gives you such access to everyone in the space, and being able to mingle with them and get some really fun things going leads us to things like this, and then other events and all sorts of different things. But no, that's really cool. And yeah, anyone who's listening, the GETIDA podcasts are fantastic. We like Lisa mentioned, we've been on a few. Sellernomics is really cool. Highly recommend checking them out, as well as and any other content and events that GETIDA is putting on. They're fantastic. That might actually be a good segue. You talked about kind of Max being in the background and kind of what you guys do in the front office and whatnot. Maybe that's a good segue into talking a little bit more about GETIDA and kind of how you're helping sellers and how they can get the most out of your platform and so on and so forth.
Yeah, sure thing. Gosh, and stop me at any point in time with questions or if I start rambling, because I can talk about GETIDA for hours. So one of the things that I love the most about GETIDA is that, and I love this about all brands that kind of have the same beginning story, right? Is when it is made by sellers from an issue that they had. They identify an area of improvement or a deficiency in the industry, and they say, you know what, let's fix this. So GETIDA was started in 2015 by Yoni Mazur and Max Boren when they were both sellers themselves. They were selling, if I remember correctly, like high-end luxury watches. And they were selling on eBay originally, were heard about this thing called FBA, and they said, okay, maybe we'll give it a shot. They were cautiously optimistic, and they shipped in their first unit, or their first order. Their first shipment was 116 units. Immediately, 3 of them were missing, which is, when you're dealing with 116 units, that's a huge percentage, right? But before they even shipped it, they deep dived into their terms of service. And okay, what happens if you lose our stuff? Like, if I lose something in my own warehouse, it's on me. But if I'm going to trust you with my business and my life savings, which is what the boys had invested at that point in time, I need to know how you're going to make it right. I need to know what the margin of error is here. I need to know what the course of action is. So they dove deep into the terms of service. They learned about Amazon's reimbursement policy. And after thorough review and conversations with Amazon, you guys, this is 2015. You used to actually be able to like get them on the phone much more easily. And like there was an email to Jeff, you know, it was a very different world. And so they shipped into FBA and, you know, they knew about this reimbursement and then they had to take advantage of it immediately, right? But as they continued to ship in, their business got bigger and bigger. They actually merged with a larger business. And as they continued to experience these situations of needing the reimbursements and the auditing, they were managing it all through spreadsheets. And spreadsheets can get overwhelmed. Like, as Yoni likes to phrase it, they were breaking. You eventually get to a point where it's too much data, and she just says, no, I'm done for the day. So they built out a tool that they were just using internally and showed it to a couple of their seller friends. And they were like, oh, can you do this for us? Like, we'll pay you. Like, can you take our data and put it into this tool and manage it? And that's essentially how GETIDA was born, was out of the need for the tool and the practice of sellers themselves. So GETIDA's been around for, we're in our 8th year of business now, and we've got a global team of, I think, over 200 across 8 or 9 countries. The number keeps increasing. I can't keep up. And it's just one of the easiest no-brainer tools for Amazon sellers to help them minimize their fees and maximize their profits. It's just a no-brainer.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and that's something that I've heard echoed from various sellers, is that Amazon, although a great platform for consumers and the likes, has, I guess, in some ways for the seller community, struggled to keep up with its own growth, right? So having GETIDA, step in there to help sellers when they might not be able to get support otherwise, to get reimbursements back for anything that happens with, any sort of inventory problems and whatnot, is something that's really spectacular.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to ask, kind of in that same vein, like, what are some of the common ways that, you see Amazon sellers, I guess, maybe in the context of GETIDA and otherwise, like, leaving money on the table? And what are some of like the glaring problems that your team has come across in operating this wonderful platform that you guys have?
Yeah, sure thing. And let me start by saying this too. Amazon is still going to be the best channel far and beyond any others for selling your product, right? Especially FBA. Yes, things happen. There's going to be that margin of error. Their computers make mistakes. People make mistakes. So that's why these discrepancies exist. But it's still far and away the best platform to sell your product on. So that's why we focus on it. They have such a robust and legitimate reimbursement terms. That's why this works the way that it does. But to answer your question, so the best way that I can give this is like in an example, right? So GETIDA, what we're doing is we're auditing the seller central account for any discrepancies with their inventory. And those discrepancies, generally between 1% to 3% of a seller's annual revenue, is impacted by a discrepancy that could warrant a reimbursement by Amazon. So the easiest example of this is lost shipment. So Sam, you send in 1,000 units to FBA. Jeff is not going to call you and say, hey, Sam, I got 900 of your 1,000. Have a fantastic Thursday. That's absolutely not going to happen. It is the responsibility, and it's the onus of the seller to audit their account regularly to look for any of these discrepancies. So that's the easiest one. So then you'll look in your account and you'll say, okay, your inbound shipments, this one is processing. They're still working on it. Okay, this one's in receiving. Okay, we're good. Wait a second, this one's closed out. It says 1,000 are expected, but 900 are received. What happened here? So the seller needs to open up a case with Amazon, and Amazon either says, whoops, I found your box in a corner, my bad, and they reapply it to your account. That's an inventory reimbursement. Or they say, hey, Sam, so sorry. That was accidentally included in a destroyed inventory order or removal order, or we just straight up lost it. And then you're going to get that cash reimbursement. And what's great about the reimbursement policy that Amazon has is that they will reimburse you the list price for the product. Now, if you've run coupons or any kind of deals on it, there is a algorithm in place to give, I think it's the average cost over the past 30 or 45 days, something like that. But in general, it's your list price. And so when you get that reimbursement, it's one, bringing money back from the dead that you didn't know that you were missing in the first place. And then two, you didn't have to pay PPC to sell that product. So it's like you sold it for free, So it's really like, it's really generous. the program that Amazon has in place, there is the perspective of like, well, if they don't lose it in the first place, okay, yeah, but you lose things in your house. Like I just moved. I don't know where half my stuff is. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So they have this process in place to make right for when these errors occur. And the awesome thing about it that a lot of sellers don't know is that you can actually start with an 18-month look back. So that's what GETIDA does with all of our sellers. Once we have a direct API, we do an 18-month look back on your account because that is the longest reimbursement claim window. Now, some are shorter, some are 6 months or 9 months, depending on your geography of where you're selling. Some are only 3, like weights and dimensions are pretty quick. It's only 3 months, but we go back 18 to find you everything that's been missed over the last year and a half. So it's a pretty significant payday at the beginning. And in terms of leaving money on the table, when you go to sell your business, if you are growing an Amazon business with the goal of an exit and you haven't been processing your FBA refunds, you are leaving so much money on that table because that is money that you can put towards your bottom line to then get a greater multiple. Maybe not necessarily, oh, you'll get a 6 now instead of a 5, but 5x on 100,000 is different than 5x on 200,000. You know, where do you want to
Yeah.
be? So that's one of the ways is one, just help them make their businesses more profitable from the jump. And when you increase that profitability and you minimize those fees, you can reinvest in your business. You can go get more inventory. You can increase either your PPC spend or improve your product photography and videography. You can do so many more things to help you continue to grow on the platform. And then if you're looking to exit, definitely be sure all of your claims are filed before exit because you will get so much more money back on that sale.
You know, a lot of people who want to start a side hustle or want to, you know, go out as a solopreneur, an entrepreneur with a team, you know, more often than not, they have an exit in mind, right? They kind of want to build this
Mm-hmm.
business, exit, start another one, or, you know, achieve freedom of sorts or something along those lines. And it's really important to make sure that your business is in excellent shape, tip top health, right? You know, as you approach that exit strategy. So the fact that you guys are, you know, helping these sellers to get right with all the reimbursements, take back the money that they're leaving on the table is something that I think really goes a long way with this community. It's fantastic. You know, I guess, you know, if you have any examples of any case studies or success stories with certain sellers about the exits or anything like that, I'd love to hear a little bit more, maybe about like a real life example of a seller, maybe recently. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot in that fashion, but if you have any
No,
real
it's
numbers that
okay.
you've seen in the platform, that'd be really interesting.
I don't know that I have any statistics about an exit, right? So we don't generally have insight specifically when a seller comes to us if they're doing this in effort of an exit. We treat all the clients the same. We're going after all of your refunds every time, regardless of size, to get your money back. What you do with it is your business. But we do have a seller of ours that some of you may know. His name is Josh Hadley. And when we spoke to him at believe it was at Camp Ecom back in January in Florida, hosted by Brandon Young and Seller Systems. We spoke to him and got a testimonial, and his first reimbursement through GETIDA was $40,000. His first check back of $40,000 that was left on the table. Can you imagine that, Sam? That is insane. So that's probably my favorite because when he said that number to us, we were all sticker shook. Is that shocked or shook? Either way, even the
Either
GETIDA team
way.
was like,
Yeah.
holy crap, that is impressive, right? So that's probably my most favorite. But I mean, there's folks out there that are using this reimbursement money to pay off their homes, to get ahead in their business, to eliminate their debt. I mean, the whole reason for selling on Amazon, whether it be a side hustle or a primary business, is to get that control over your schedule so that you can you have your autonomy back, to not have to work for another business and really get control of your life. And it's hard to do that when you're behind on your bills or you have these limitations of maybe not having a vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. So we do have stories like that, but Josh's is, I think, the first one that comes to mind.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. And in the case of Josh, I mean, that's, you know, enormous, right? That refund is like somebody's salary or like a
Mm-hmm.
tuition at Harvard, you know, something like that. It's, it's pretty crazy when you break it
Yes.
down into terms like that. And yeah, there's so many people in this space that, you know, that's what's so alluring about selling on Amazon is the idea of being able to achieve freedom or an exit or work on your own type of product and business for the love of it. And to see that you guys are really helping them realize that dream and get the reimbursements that they need back from their business is really awesome. And I really appreciate it. And I guess, for you, having been in e-commerce for so long, having spent a lot of time with partners and sellers and all that, and kind of observing the trends that are taking place, I'd love to hear, kind of like, in your opinion, and kind of from what you're seeing, what sort of emerging trends or technologies, that are coming out of the woodworks do you see really shaping the future of e-commerce for the better, for the worse, on Amazon, off Amazon, and kind of how are you positioning GETIDA to kind of stay ahead of that curve, if at all?
Yeah, great question. So, probably the two most prevalent themes that I'm seeing right now are going to be one, AI. We have to talk about it, right? Chat
Of
GPT has
course.
taken over. There are so many tools now. I believe that Prophecy has a tool, Chad Rubin with Prophecy, and I think even Data Dive might have one as well now. I apologize if I'm misquoting, but there are so many more tools now that are incorporating AI into their strategy to help these Amazon sellers grow. And at the beginning, I think there was a little bit of a fear of some real life folks being replaced by AI. And it's not a replacement, it's a tool, right? It's to be used for inspiration and kind of to streamline some workflows and make us all more effective and more efficient. So AI is definitely top of list right now. And then the second thing that I see folks talking about, probably more so now than ever, is global expansion. So this is something we actually had multiple speakers talk about at the Scale for Retail Miami, that we ran not long ago. And Mike Thackey at Avask actually has a show now that they've kind of rejuvenated called the Global Expanders Live. Global
Got it.
expansion's really become the name of the game, especially as Amazon continues to expand into new marketplaces. You want to be able to get into a strong foothold and brand presence in these new marketplaces. So those are probably the two that I see, because it's much easier. Yes, the preferences of consumers in different marketplaces are going to be different, but as far as having to learn a new platform, it makes so much more sense to eliminate that learning curve of the platform itself, of the marketplace itself, of Amazon, as opposed to selling on Amazon exclusively and then going to Mercado Libre, or what's the super famous French one? I'm blanking, but any of the other actual marketplaces. So
Yeah.
expanding into these different geographies is really the biggest topic right now. So I can't say too much as to what GETIDA has kind of up our sleeve, but we are actively working towards being active and live and being able to file reimbursements for all of the geographies that Amazon has marketplaces in. We'll have a release about a new one very soon, but I can't say anything else other than that right
Sure.
now.
No, that's okay. And it is really helpful to, like, hear your perspective on kind of how you see Chat GPT and AI kind of evolving as it kind of intertwines with global expansion and all that. That just seems how, the more technology advances, the more interconnected we all become. And it's really interesting to see. So I appreciate your insights there. And I guess, yeah, for anyone listening, stay tuned on GETIDA's social media and blog and all that for more updates on what's to come there. Um, and moving on just a little bit, one thing I wanted to ask you, is maybe, since you spend a lot of time with sellers and you spend a lot of time at these events, like with all of us, and kind of from what you've heard, what is one tip that you would give to maybe an e-commerce entrepreneur, solopreneur, somebody who's really just starting out, who's really just beginning, wants to start an Amazon store, maybe just started an Amazon store, is kind of trying to figure out everything. But what was one tip you would give to, someone like that who's in search of solutions and ways to grow their profitability and growth and whatnot? What's something you would impart to them?
I have two, if I can, if that's okay.
Please,
So
please.
I would like to remind everybody to focus on the basics. Spend time on your product development and creating a product that is truly differentiated. A color variation is not a differentiator. Make it something that folks are going to want to buy, because no amount of PPC is going to fix a bad product. So listen to what your consumers are saying, invest in good sourcing and product testing, and be sure that what you're going to market with is strong and valuable, and then spend the money in marketing it, right? So just make sure it's a solid item, first of all. And then my second piece of advice would be to get involved. If you have an Amazon sellers meetup that is near you or in driving distance, if you find even a virtual group, or if there is an event at a city near you, or if you're not listening to podcasts or reading blogs, get involved in the community and make connections. I can't tell you the number of impactful and life-changing business conversations and decisions that had been made from just two people being seated next to each other at a meetup event. So those would be my two pieces of advice. Would be to, one, be sure you're selling a solid product. Don't put junk on the platform. It's going to come around and get you later. And two, get involved, build that community. It's such a wonderful, wonderful community that we have in the Amazon space. Even just between the partners, between the sellers themselves, everybody's happy to make an introduction, give honest feedback, we all rise. What is it? Rising tides lift all boats. And this is such a young industry, and there's so much to be had still. It's really beautiful how we all come together and work together. So get involved with the community, you guys, and make as many connections as you can, because that's really going to be the key to growing your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Words of wisdom. Guys, the community is so rich when it comes to e-commerce, and everybody's willing to help each other out with collaborations and tips and whatnot. It's really amazing to see. I haven't seen it like in any other industry, and I come from like a finance and sales and trading type background, and it's just not the same there. It just really isn't. And in commerce, everyone's very, very welcoming and open, and it's really wonderful to see. And especially in Austin, there's a very rich community of everyone who wants to meet up and chat about it, which is good. And all over every single city, you will find a meetup that is centered around e-commerce selling, and it's surely to be something that's impactful for your business overall. I guess, Lisa, kind of just to get down to it, to some of our last questions here, what is the best way for sellers and maybe even partners to get in touch with you, to get in touch with GETIDA? Where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. So you guys can connect with me on LinkedIn, Lisa Kinskey, Kinskey. You guys can also follow GETIDA on any and all of the social platforms. Visit our website at getida.com. And you can actually find our calendar of events. If you do getida.com / like right now we're in Q2. If you do getida.com / Q2, you'll see all the places that we're heading to next. And definitely be sure to check out our 2 podcasts as well, because that's going to have some really awesome content similar to this with our lovely partners like 8Fig. And we've had them on multiple episodes. The whole team is fabulous. But those are the places that you can reach me. Or you can email me directly at lisa@getida.com. I'm always happy to answer any inquiries that anybody has.
Awesome. Thank you again so much for joining, Lisa. Yep, lots of events in the space. You'll be bound to find 8Fig and GETIDA at a few of them, so please feel free to come say hi. And that's pretty much it. That's a wrap, folks. Thank you again, Lisa, for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. That's pretty much all I have for today. Again, thank you everyone for tuning in again. This is Sell Yeah, the podcast segment ran by 8Fig, where we feature interviews with our valued partners like Lisa, GETIDA, and our sellers to spread the good word about what they're doing to bring value to the e-commerce space and make for a better ecosystem for us all. If you'd like to learn more about 8Fig specifically, you can visit us at 8fig.co and check us out and how we can help your supply chain and whatnot. And feel free to reach out to me or the team at howdy@8fig for more info. So that's a wrap for today. Again, Lisa, thank you so much. It was a pleasure chatting with you.